You ever gotten revenge on a teacher? I was a senior in high school. I had an English teacher named Mrs. Smith. Mrs. Smith was a mean old bat that hated anything and everything. To give a mental image of what she looks like, her face sagged so much it looked like she had a perpetual stroke. Imagine Ursula and Cruella de Vil had a child and then that child had a baby with the devil. You get Mrs. Smith. None of the other English teachers liked her. There was nothing that they nor the administration could do due to her tenure. That is, until I became her student. Her teaching style included yelling at students, putting them down with petty insults, having us read to ourselves in the middle of class, not letting female students go to the restroom for very obvious reasons, and the occasional losing students' work then accusing the students of not turning their work in. This last part is what crossed the line for me. You see, I wasn't a grade A student and I sucked at English, so I always played my cards right and made friends with everyone. Students and teachers included. So when I struggled and couldn't do something on my own, I let my charm save me and cash out on my months of being nice to everyone. However, no one could be friends with Mrs. Smith. I tried being polite. I was met with rudeness. I tried asking her how her morning was. I was met with silence and dead stares. I tried asking how I could improve my writing skills. She told me that she wasn't willing to help. Within the first week of class, I knew I had met my match. So halfway through the semester, we're working on a big research paper. However, the day after the due date, Mrs. Smith had to go up to Illinois for some family issues for 2 weeks. Mind you, we turned in our papers both in hand and on Turnitin.com for plagiarism checking. No biggie. We won't get our grades back for a while, but at least we won't have to deal with her while we wait. Or so we thought. A few days after she got back, only about half of the students got their papers back. The other half, including myself, were sitting there staring and waiting, thinking that she was going to go back to her desk and pull out the remaining papers to return to her students. But nope, she told us to take out our textbooks and start reading Beowulf. Those of us that didn't receive their papers tried to interject and inquire about our papers, and she snapped back with, "You should have turned them in when they were due." In unison, we respond with, "We did." Of course, she denies it, and within a few days, our grades drop immensely. At the end of the grading period, our report cards show a big fat F for English. Everyone is livid. And the worst part is if you get anything below a C, you are to be moved to a lower level English class at the end of the semester. Between the zero from the paper that carried almost half of our grade and only a few weeks remaining in the semester, almost half of the class was doomed to fail out. Now, most of the students were happy with having to leave her class. There was not much they could do. But I was careful. Remember the teaching methods I mentioned above? Well, Mrs. Smith thought that because we were in a classroom that had no cameras, her behavior wasn't being recorded. She was dead wrong. From the second week on, I started recording audio on my phone every day from the moment I walked into the class to the moment I left. I caught every single one of her personal attacks of students on tape. When she fell asleep, I pulled out my phone and recorded her. My pleas for help to improve and her refusal to help weren't left out either. Every day, I would go home, cut the audio to keep the good parts. And every day, my collection of dirt on her grew. And remember how I said we used Turnitin.com as well as paper? I had coordinated with all of the other students who were going to fail to screenshot all of their Turnitin receipts and send them to me as proof that they turned in their work. When she decided to fail me for her mistake, she unleashed my inner lawyer. I went straight to the administration and scheduled a parent-teacher admin conference. A week later, my parents, the principal, the school counselor, the head of the English department, and Mrs. Smith were all present. I started with how she had lost half of the class's work and most of us failed because of it. She denied it and again accused us of turning in our work late as well as cheating and a bunch of other lies. I remained calm and just pulled out a folder that contained all of the screenshots from my backpack and handed it to the principal, who then passed it to the head of the English department, who then asked Mrs. Smith to explain it. She instantly turned red in the face and started stuttering. Before she could get any words out, I said, "That's not all. Listen to this." I pull out my phone and start playing back the highlights from the semester. All the while, I'm staring dead into Mrs. Smith's eyes while trying to hold back a grin. After the audio finished, the principal looked at me and said, "I think we've seen enough," and asked me to leave. I sat outside of the conference room savoring the muffled yelling through the walls. I could hear my dad yelling at her like he yelled at me when I really messed up. I knew I had been successful. The parent-teacher conference was on a Friday. I walked into class the following Monday to see an empty desk and a substitute teacher we all recognized and loved.